Right. Hey, Stephen Van Patten here for the next come up. My guest is the city council member for the 36th district of Brooklyn, and he is looking to become the next borough president. There is literally nothing to dislike about this man. He's a Democrat, church background, played college hoops, father of six, just a great guy. Robert Cornegy is here. It's a real honor to have you here, sir. All right, let's get into business. Now, you've been public servant for many years, and yeah, multiple achievements under your belt. The Khalif Browder bill coming to mind off the top of my head. But let's talk about how that translates into you being borough president.
So, quite frankly, the borough president's role is such an undefined role that allows everybody to bring their level of acumen to that particular role. The current borough president has focused on physical health and plant-based eating so that we could get to a place of being like the healthiest borough. And it was that competition. Prior to him, Marty Markowitz was what people called the borough's biggest cheerleader. He was way more than that, but just just for context. So you get to bring your level of acumen. I'm currently the chair of housing and buildings, and in the last legislative session, I was the chair of small business. I get to bring that during a period where we need true recovery and resiliency, which I think it'll be based on the ability to create jobs and undergird small businesses, as well as create affordable housing. So those are two levels of acumen that I bring to the table that are needed almost immediately as we come out of the pandemic. Okay. So that's kind of by way of how I get here and how I think I translate or transfer the skills and the successes that we've had over my 2 terms at the council.
Do you feel like you're being overshadowed by the mayoral race a little bit?
Yeah. Like it's between what's going on with the mayoral race, between a little bit of voter exhaustion from the last year's presidential. There are a lot of mitigating factors that make borough president not as sexy as it could possibly be, unfortunately for me. But definitely overshadowed by everything that's going on in the mayoral, and the 16 mayoral candidates or something ridiculous makes it a little hard for people to focus their attention around a little known role that has a lot of significance as the borough president.
Right. So in other words, that's probably a little confusion as to what you're even running for or stuff like that from just a general public standpoint, I guess.
A way of confusing, I'm going to try to give this context without telling on myself, but there were 2 ticket agents who were by my car, and my car obviously is littered with Rob Cornegy stuff. So they're kind of standing there looking at it, in between writing me the ticket probably, and in between whatever. And I walk up and the woman goes, very nice African-American ticket agent goes, "Oh my God, we thought it was you. I can't decide whether I want you or Eric Adams." And I was like, we're running for 2 different positions. I'm not running against Eric Adams. And I was incredibly disappointed at that point that even public servants are so confused with the elections and 2 people they like or have had a history with believing that they're running against each other. So I got an opportunity, thankfully, there to say, no, you can have both of us. You can have Eric for mayor and me for borough president. I got to say that. But how many other people out here are kind of thinking that that's a thing? And that's so not a thing.
Right. Right. Okay. Wow. So that's one you got anyway.
Well, she was with a partner, so 2.
Oh, two. Oh, okay. We got 2. So I saw the May 26th debate. How do you think you did?
You know, it's hard to tell. What I could tell is, because in debates, sometimes candidates are talking or playing to the climate and not really speaking to what the role and the capacity of the role is. So I always feel like I get lost in these huge ideas around defunding the police and all kinds of different things that really the charter don't even allow you to have input in. So I try to stay focused on what the charter allows me to do as the borough president, and that's not quite as sexy, right? So you get to, as a candidate, talk about global views on things, and really you have no capacity to do that. And so I always get stuck in these debates with trying to stay focused on what the role allows me to do and not really playing to that. And I don't know how well that plays. Like, so people who are staunch, folks who are long-term voters can stay focused with you. But other people are kind of, they're moved by whatever is large and loud and sexy and those kinds of things. And I just, so in these debates, I just don't know. I really try to focus my attention and intention on the role and the capacity of the role. And people are lobbing grenades about, things that you have no capacity to do.
We're going to defeat the communists, and we're going to be recycling. And like, wait, what are we talking about here? Yeah, I get it.
With all due respect, there was some of that. And then you have to stay on.
There was.
You got to stay on your square, because you can get caught up in that too, and then you're down a rabbit hole that you can't get back from. So from a perspective of staying on message, I thought I did well. From a perspective of we're just going to talk about everything and what we'd love to do, in a utopian world, what we'd love to have is 100% affordability on every project. I don't know how to be in that kind of conversation. And have sanity to it. So I don't know the answer, quite frankly.
Right. Because ultimately, I guess it's like sort of like you're debating somebody and they're sort of like in a land of make-believe, and you're like, no, but this is what this is. So I get that.
You can't even say that, because it looks like you're being disagreeable. So you can't, you almost have to ignore the ridiculous proposition that somebody just put forward and kind of stay focused on what you can do. And that kind of makes you look like a politician, right? And I'm like, but I'm so not a politician. But everybody's throwing, so it's difficult to figure out where you are. But from a standpoint of getting a message of what the role allows me to do, what I've done in the past that correlates to the role, I think we did well. How it resonates is what I don't know the answer to.
Yeah, I hear you. All right. So one other thing I noticed about the debate, you having to go first the whole time.
That was actually the worst, because people get to build upon your answer or Google, and that usually never happens. They usually do a round robin, so you'll go first this time, and then the next person will go first, giving you a chance to calm down. So that was a little unusual.
Right. Yeah, I was kind of thinking you kind of got handicapped there. It's literally like everybody got to cheat off your paper. So let's see. You one sort of a stumble was I guess this gentleman Boris Santos asked you a question about community trust discretionary funds, or you want to readdress that at all?
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to do that. He was talking about community land trusts, which I thoroughly support. And there's two ways to allocate discretionary funding. Generally, discretionary funding goes to institutions like schools, but there is discretionary funding that you can use for institutions that are not, for nonprofits that are not institutions. And he kind of said that very weird. And so yes, I would allocate discretionary funding to CLTs, which I support 100%. CLTs being nonprofits that are not traditional in the fact that they're not institutional nonprofits. So the budget does allow you to do exactly that, and certainly I would do that. But he just asked it in such a weird way that I had no idea what he was talking about. Right. In the way that he asked it, it was almost as if it was intentional. But it's all good. It's all good. But thank you for giving me a chance to clear that up.
Oh yeah, no, sure. Anything else? Because you were under time constraints, and there were a couple of times there I felt like you were just about to get into a sort of like a head of steam, and then you got cut off. So anything else you want to jump on real quick, just from the debate?
No, because I think that that also was unfortunate, right? Because the framework that they used was less about the opportunity to highlight the role and what you could do from the role, like I said before, and more about these kind of a very large, idealistic kind of things. And I thought that wasn't as responsible as you possibly could be in a debate forum.
Sure.
If I ever have the pleasure of hosting one, I'm certainly going to allow, or at least steer the questions towards what their actual role is, and not kind of set people up with these open-ended, kind of idealistic positions. I don't know about the level of responsibility on that, with all due respect to the host and moderator.
There. Sure. More than a few of your fellow candidates, they threw around the phrase bully pulpit to indicate how they would affect change. You didn't. Now, is that because you see it as kind of an empty catchphrase, or do you just have a different way of doing things?
Well, one is an empty catchphrase, and people used it in instances where they couldn't determine what the actual right policy may be. And I'm responsible for being more skilled at what we've been able to do and sticking to what the charter mandates. And so it was intentional for me not to use the phrase. Now it's a true phrase in the fact that there are some things in the role that aren't characterized or in the job makeup. And it's in those instances you get to use the quote unquote bully pulpit by bringing attention to something, by using your access to the media to engage in something,
Right.
but you don't necessarily have purview over it. And I don't want to keep using that as a catch-all. Like everything I can do, I'm just going to use the bully pulpit. Everything that's not in my purview, I'm just going to use the bully pulpit. I think that belies the actual capacity of the role, right?
Yeah.
And it plays into this idea that the role of borough president is more ceremonious than anything else. There are actual tangible things that you can do and create. The $100 million in capital funding coupled with zoning and land use powers make it relatively powerful in an ever unaffordable borough with gentrification, with job loss. Like you can actually affect change through the charter and your charter mandated responsibilities. So I'm less likely to say bully pulpit only because it kind of usurps my power or it gives my power away. I'd rather focus on the actual powers of the office instead of saying, about police brutality, I'll just use the bully pulpit to highlight. I mean, then anybody could do that. Then you might as well be the advocate or something, right? We actually have powers, charter mandated powers that we should be focusing on. And in the instance that we have to use a larger medium to get a message across that may be of our purview, then we say that. But this use of the term bully pulpit kind of gives the idea that it's not that that the role doesn't have any teeth and it doesn't have any value if you're just saying, I'm just going to say whatever I want to say whenever I want to say it. By using the term bully pulpit. That's kind of how it resonated with me, especially in that term when every candidate said it 50 times a piece. I chose to stay focused in that moment in particular on what I could actually do as a way of differentiating myself from the other candidates at that point.
Gotcha. Another thing from the debate. So as a writer, I'm a writer and I'm a member of a professional arts frat. I'm not a divine nine like yourself, but I was particularly interested in what you said about establishing an artist colony. Could you expound on that, please?
Since the first day that I took office, I have been trying to work with HPD to create, and I'll simplify it, to create a building that had below market rents for artists. Specifically, I'm not going to give the deep philosophical thing. No, a colony that, and then the commercial space at the bottom would be a space that rotated and using different mediums, and everybody would have to work in or volunteer in that space, whether it's a concert, whether it's an art gallery exhibition, highlighting the artists that are in the building by using and transforming the commercial space to meet the needs of the residents in the building. I think that, and the reason being is because if you look at how gentrification takes place, artists are usually, for lack of a better term, the pioneers that go into difficult areas first and then get priced out. So the cycle goes, artists go, for lack of a better term, and settle the area, right?
That is what it is.
Everyone else comes behind them, jacks up the price, and then the artists who actually were there through the most difficult times, through the most challenging things, whether it was drugs, high crime, whatever, go there, put their stamp on it, actually begin to speak to the issues through art, change the climate, and then get forced out. So I'm saying I wanted to, through having an affordable housing for artists situation, create an environment where that didn't happen, at least not in Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights, and then have a replicable model for the rest of the city and cities across the world who, if asked, everybody would say they value the contribution of artists, whether it's in the social justice space, whether it's in the recreation and creative space. There's no place that artists aren't valued. We just never put our money where our mouth is. And I wanted to, for once, actually put our money where our mouth is. I imagine how great it would be to create if you didn't have to worry about 50% of your income going towards your housing. So I want to see the greatness and the creativity that comes out of artists without the stress and pressure of being a starving artist. So how about if government actually created an environment through affordable housing, a mechanism that's already in place? We have affordable housing for veterans, we have affordable housing for seniors. Mm-hmm. We actually have created affordable housing for the LGBT community. Mm-hmm. All of those laudable goals and accomplishments.
Yes.
I just wanted to say, hey, can we do some set-asides for our artists, which have healing properties and social justice property. Every great initiative has centered around or has had an art component to it. All change has centered around the use of art, whatever medium it is. I don't know why we keep disrespecting it and going, well, you guys find your way somehow. Give me all you got, but find your way however you can find it. I just wanted to, for once, demonstrate a commitment to artists in my word and in my deed, but it could certainly alleviate and create a pathway to more creativity if the worry didn't center around your living, especially as a creative.
Yes.
So that's the goal in design, and I'm hoping I can get a shovel in the ground before I'm done. That is a legacy project to me, to create an artist colony. And I know I didn't have a better term for it, right? That's probably not the right term, but actually affordable housing that allows for artists to share in their mediums in a commercial environment, but right, to have below market rent as they work and they transfer our communities. That's my goal. And that's one of the things. Listen, we've had a lot of accomplishments. We brought gifted and talented programs back. We created a horizontal naturally occurring retirement community. We just built the first community center from the ground up in a NYCHA development in 20 years. I can do this. And this is my final legacy project, is to create this environment where everybody can benefit from centralizing artists and having them have an affordable housing option.
Gotcha. All right. And as a science fiction guy, I think colony's fine.
I don't want to, in my effort to be a good responsible legislator, piss somebody off, which I generally do every day, no matter how it works out. Well, I just tell you, I want to tell you a quick story. So I'm in city council, and a young Midwestern young lady who moved to New York City, who now works for the New York City Council, saw me in the hallway in City Hall, and she said, "Oh my God, you're my council member." I said, "Oh, great. How long have you been here?" And she said, wait, before I tell you how long I've been here, I got to tell you the story. I have a window into your life. I said, well, give me the window into my life. She said, I was on Bedford Avenue, and I was walking down Bedford, going to get on the A train to come to work today. And as I was walking, I was saying to myself, wow, what great legislators we have that would create, because we had done some discretionary funding to populate commercial thoroughfares with plants and flowers and all of that, trying to really, soften this concrete jungle that we're in. Made a commitment. Said as she's walking, she's got this juxtaposition of being in the city and its vibrancy, and now flowers. She was like, it was the best of both worlds. And in the moment of her feeling that way, a lady behind her said, "What damn asshole would plant flowers knowing that people have allergies?" And she said, "That must be a window into your life." And I was like, "You are absolutely right." But that is actually a window into, and I tell that story because most people can understand what it's like to try and make a difference. And at the very exact same moment that you think you've made a difference, then somebody gives you a knee to the groin to remind you how much you suck. So.
That must be tough. Oh my God. All right. And speaking of tough, let's move on to gentrification. Outside of like pretty high-rise buildings and some great coffee and artisanal cheese and all that crap, let's face it. We got greedy landlords. We got disenfranchised working class people of color. Things are a mess. I guess the question right now is, can we get back to some kind of quality, affordable housing situation? Is that still on the playing field, or has this ship sailed?
There are a couple of ways that we're trying to revisit the idea of affordability. One of those ways is leveraging the city and state's portfolio on vacant land is vast, believe it or not. What the city and the state has demonstrated an unwillingness to do is to leverage that land at affordable prices at the county to work with the state to create affordability. And right now we're working on a Mitchell-Lama 2.0 program that would not only create affordable home ownership, which is the next level to this. So everybody talks about deep affordability and the inability to pay the rents at market that they are now. But what nobody's talking about is the American dream, which is to own property, to build wealth, and to transfer wealth to your families. And there's nuanced ways of doing that. So for me, through co-op ownership, the operative word being ownership, we can create a mechanism by way people are more invested in their communities. And so the reason I mentioned the city and the state is because the dormitory authority of the state of New York has property in my district that the interfaith hospital sits on.
Right.
60% of that land is underutilized. I'm partnering with them now to create a mechanism to build on that super affordable land, Mitchell-Lama type housing for our young professionals, for our artists, so that they can own in a community that's becoming increasingly unaffordable. That's a nuanced long-term solution to an immediate problem. I understand there's an immediate problem around affordability, but we have to have short-term and long-term goals. My long-term goal is to create this methodology for affordability in home ownership. My short-term goal is to continue to hold developers responsible for affordable units in the developments in my district, and now hopefully in the borough of Brooklyn, which we can do. And then the third component to that is one of the reasons that I'm so excited about potentially being the borough president is I get to leverage $100 million in capital dollars plus zoning and land use as a trifecta with responsible developers to create true affordability. When we've relied on the private sector to create affordability, we've gotten greedy landlords and we've gotten an unaffordable and inequitable system. However, when we've relied on government to solely be responsible, we've gotten NYCHA, right? So on both ends of the spectrum, people have gotten screwed in this affordability process. What we haven't done, and what I intend to do, is work collaboratively and put together private and public partnerships to create affordability. That's a long-term sustainable option that we haven't tried in any full measure that I'm going to be operating under for the borough presidency. I believe that that's the true pathway to long-term sustainable affordability, is through a public-private partnership with responsible developers, the operative word being responsible. We know that there are developers who have operated responsibly in minority communities and in the city. We need to bring those to the forefront and push back on these bad actors. But as my grandmother would say, not throw out the baby with the bathwater.
All right.
You know, even in the debates, people are saying things that you don't have the power to do in terms of changing affordability. I'm telling you what I have the power to do, not some kind of, and I don't want to be dismissive by saying pie in the sky, because people may actually not know what the powers of the office do and allow you to do. So I want to be dismissive, but real true pathways to affordability are these ways. Unfortunately, they're not turning over the apple cart. They're long-term solutions to a problem that we have that's pervasive and that's a pretty acute right now. So it's more sexy to say, you know, we're not taking development money and we're not going to work with developers. Developers actually build. I don't know how you get the affordable housing without developers. So there's a part, you have to strike the right balance. And I always use the word responsible developers because being the chair of housing and buildings, I've actually worked with some very responsible MWBE companies who build in our communities, who don't deserve to have that moniker, who've committed themselves and have a vision for affordability that's inclusive. So there are some good actors. You can't throw out the baby with the bathwater, and I don't intend to do that. There's such a cancel mentality in our society right now. It doesn't allow, you know, where collaboration and negotiation has a negative connotation, we're going in the wrong direction.
All right. I guess we'll switch gears because that was so comprehensive. I have nothing else in the gentrification department at this point. But let's go on to, speaking of bad actors, let's go into police reform. What are you? Well, and again, now that we're talking about the limits of the actual job, where do you see your ability to affect that?
Well, first of all, I got to say out loud and for the 100th time, I don't believe it's mutually exclusive. to demand accountability and reform
Mm-hmm.
while still supporting a public safety platform that keeps us safe as a priority, right? It's
Amen.
not mutually exclusive.
Yes.
So I am a prime sponsor myself, Jumaane Williams and Rory Lansman, on the Eric Garner chokehold bill. So I believe fully in reform and accountability. I
Yes.
believed in the accountability matrix that we got. I believed in qualified immunity being done away with. So I believe in that. I believe from a borough president standpoint, I can work with the district attorney's office to make sure that officers are being held accountable when they do violate the new laws that we're implementing, because laws are really fly. Here's what I've learned at the council. Laws are really fly. It's the enforcement portion of those laws that determine whether or not they're effective.
Mm.
So I can put forward 8,000 laws and never follow up to see if anybody's enforcing them, which is where the problem sometimes lies. So while we've gotten this, accountability matrix and some solid reform in criminal justice reform, and by the way, I'm reluctant to just say NYPD reform because criminal justice needs to be reformed. Our criminal justice system is doing us as Black people a tremendous disservice. It ain't just the NYPD, because when you get to court, it's disproportionate. You're disproportionately sentenced for the same crime, negative, stiffer penalties and sentences than our other ethnic counterparts. That needs criminal justice reform. So I'm a little bit more comprehensive with my approach. So the Khalif Browder bill, which you mentioned, sought to do a little bit of that and actually reduce the rate of recidivism around people who are in city facilities. So there's a lot of work to be done and enough blame to go around. I'm less likely to do that and be more about, focusing on making policy and legislative changes that I can, working with the district attorney's office within the accountability matrix to hold officers, men, women, Black, white, accountable for when they violate the new laws that we're instituting. Those things I can do from the borough president's office, and reluctantly, yes, I can use the bully pulpit in order to highlight the inequities that we found. But that's my last resort. Once I've done all of those things and no one's listened, then I'm going to the bully pulpit.
And there it is. So we kind of, to that point, we are kind of living in two Brooklyns these days. It's like there's the folks that kind of seem to want to put us in some sort of like Mayberry kind of thing, and then there's those of us that have been here since day one, and I want to say kept our neighborhoods viable despite the crack epidemic from back in the day and everything else like that. And the two camps are really starting to, at least from what I'm seeing, is there's like a fair amount of disagreements. Like everybody's got dogs now, and like I said, it's like coffee and artisanal cheese over here, and then people are still kind of in squalor over here. It's what are your thoughts on I guess bridging the gap, or if anything like that's even possible?
Because of the community, because of the beautiful architecture, but I don't want all of that. So I don't want the true authenticity of the borough and of these communities that people have come to. So people have to be uber responsible in saying you're coming into a system that has invited you. Like, you're here because was it Condé Nast? I forgot who said that we're the third sexiest place to be in the world or something ridiculous. So you're reading the press clippings and you know what it is to be here. So you're coming to be part of, or you should be to be part of a system that has been created so that you could come here. So you can't come and then demand immediate change. I've had him. It's a funny story. In my office, I had a resident who would call me every Monday because the mosque would call out its prayers on Friday and the church would ring its bells on Sunday. And I was like, that we have the largest ecumenical community in the world is here. I know you read that in some of your brochures somewhere. They told you that, Brooklyn is the borough of churches, mosques, and synagogues. So you want to come and then tell me to tell the mosque not to use the PA system which I'm accustomed to. I wake up on Friday afternoon, Juma prayers, and I'm not Muslim, but I enjoy that integrity for our community that these prayers are going to take place. And when the summertime is, and because of the pandemic, people were praying on the street.
Absolutely, yes.
And for some people, that represented, oh my God, I can't believe that they're doing this. They were doing this when you got here, and they'll probably be doing it when you're gone. That's a part of the fabric of why you came, for this integrity. So we got to have, at the risk of sounding corny, we got to have more communication and more dialogue. People have to be willing to share the streets, literally and figuratively. And what that means is, if you see me coming, you might want to move to the side a little bit, especially if you're new in town. You might want to limit the sightseeing that you're doing. And then secondly, a good morning never hurt anybody. So the idea that you would be here and be dismissive is the problem. So we're a welcoming city, borough, and culture.
Yes.
But we're not willing to be dismissed in the process. And I think that that's the undertone that we have to go with. The protest and demonstration showed that there can be allies in situations that there need to be allies. So there is some value in inviting new folks to dinner. There's value in that.
Yes.
You just can't change the menu, right? So if I invite you to dinner for soul food, you can't ask for a casserole,
right?
So I think once we get to a place, and New Yorkers are the very best at doing this. It's just that other people that are coming have to realize what the true fabric of New York is, how accepting New Yorkers are to other people's cultures, ethnicities, values, mores. But you got to do the same. So you can't come and try to superimpose. And I use the analogy about the dinner because most people can understand that. If I invite you to dinner, you can't change the menu. And that's kind of the status. And I think once we get to that, and we will, or we're going to have more altercations that demonstrate that we should. And nobody wants that.
Right.
I love The Last OG, not only because my homeboy Tracy Morgan is the star in it, because its premise sheds light on this rapid change through gentrification and how disproportionately negatively it's impacting communities. And I've heard some responsible newcomers who've said, hey, I don't want to be the guy who, but generally that's like saying, with all due respect, before you disrespect from somebody.
Yes.
So they say, listen, I don't want to be the guy who comes and then drives up prices and whatever. Oh, and by the way, just on the gentrification argument, myself and my ex-wife were having a discussion about gentrification with some very animated folks around the impact of gentrification. And halfway through the conversation, they turned and said, and by the way, we're talking about you. So don't let progressive Black folks get the idea that gentrification isn't also focused on them. And when I asked, what do you mean? They said, well, you went away to college, got a graduate degree. Your wife's got a graduate degree. So your probably household median income is probably somewhere in $250,000, $300,000 range. You bought your home at the height of the market, which it wasn't at the height of the market, but you bought your home, thus driving up the prices for everybody else. And I'm saying, okay, regardless of the fact that my wife and my wife's father and my father left their blood, sweat, and tears, my wife's father as an entrepreneur in this community and my father as a pastor in this community, we were required to go get as much as we possibly could and bring it back to leverage in our communities. And that's the response that you get. So there are some marginalized Black folks who have done what was required of them and who have returned home and are also seen as outsiders. So I just want to bring that up. I was very shocked to hear that. But so gentrification sometimes is about ethnicity, but sometimes it's about earning potential, and sometimes it's about education and some other things. So we should be careful as we throw around the term gentrification and make sure that we're clear on what its meaning is and who we're talking about.
All right, solid answer. Wow. So before we go, I just got one last little question here. So what's next after borough president? Are we presuming you win, are we taking the tape measure to Gracie Mansion, see if the desk fits? Like, what are we thinking here?
So the probably the most unsexy role in city government is the mayor's office right now. So I don't know how that changes. These mayoral candidates, as I look at them, have their work cut out for them, trying to recover the economy, trying to put us back together as a safe city, trying to heal the wounds between the NYPD and general citizens.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have 6 great kids who have a reasonable expectation that at some point I will spend some time, more time with them. Actually, as they get older, the less time they want to spend with me. So that might not be a mitigating factor. I don't know, man. I enjoy public service, right? I enjoy the possibility of increasing the quality of life of people whose voices are maligned. I've done that as a child. I was the guy in the playground who wouldn't let people take advantage of other people. So that's ingrained in me. And I just don't know. I really want to be one of the most impactful borough presidents in the history of the borough presidency, and I'd like to say, let's see where that takes me.
All right. Well, I want to thank my guest, Robert Cornegy, for his candid and illuminating answers. I also want to wish you the best of luck, brother. Really. Early voting for borough president, as well as other positions, starts June 12th, and the official primary election date is June 22nd. So please exercise your right to vote, because they're actually trying to take it away from you.
Thank you. I appreciate the time, man, and thanks for allowing me to pour a little bit of myself into an actual interview as opposed to these kind of canned questions and canned answers. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert. More next come up after this.